We did try and do a little bit of sociology, and there's no doubt that on average the hippie trailers were better educated, in the sense of more likely to have gone to university than ordinary people, which does suggest, yeah, okay, very solidly middle class. But they were a very varied lot, and within their ranks there were definitely working class people from the suburbs of London, from council houses, people who didn't have much money, people who'd never travelled abroad before. And again, I think that's true generally about hippies. You might want to say the origins of hippie culture are clearly middle class, but it was permeable. And then there were plenty of working class people saying, I like the look of that, and there weren't barriers. You know, they could float over into hippie culture, they could float over into the hippie trail. The sort of master writer here is, I think, Jack Kerouac and On the Road, which I don't think is so popular any longer now. At least I don't get the impression it is. But and there's many things wrong with that book. I don't want to sound like Brian and myself that this book is the Bible or something. But Kerouac was the one who said, you know, this is a new way of travelling. Travelling in itself can be a valid, liberatory, enjoyable experience. It doesn't have to be simply a practical route from A to B. The cameras on the hippie trail were a little bit controversial. There were some people, if you like, the purists, saying you're meant to get away from all of that. Taking a camera is like being a tourist. You're meant to just be absorbing things and taking them in, and in fact the camera is more sort of barrier than an aid to understanding. We found that quite a few people were taking cameras, and even better, some people were taking really good cameras, and the reproductions are still clear and sharp. What we were trying to do in those pictures, in a way, was trace out the journey from beginning to end, you know. So we do start off with pictures of people packing their Land Rover. We do start off, I really like it actually, it's a sort of really dull picture of this coach in a London street, and you think, well, there's nothing exciting at all about this, but you have to think somebody thought it was worth photographing, and that's how it begins, you know, in a very sort of grey London street. So the idea vaguely was to try and trace a typical journey, if you like, from beginning to end, the sort of things that people might have seen along the way. And in particular, we wanted to get a few pictures of interactions, because that was always very important. These weren't tourists, these were travellers, and the things that make travellers different is they interact with the local people, they meet them and talk to them, and ideally at least they meet and talk to them in with an ethic of equality, not with one side being superior to another, but these are just sort of people mixing. So we wanted to get a few pictures like that. If there, yeah, another permanent change that can be dated back to that is a new idea of travelling, and travelling not as a practical thing of, you know, what's the quickest route to get from here to Madrid, but travelling in a way of let's enjoy the experience, let's take it slow, let's throw in chance and randomness into it, and let's enjoy that. Let's enjoy meeting people as we go along the way. Those sort of things, I think, again, have stayed with us. So yeah, we could give the Hippie Trail some credit for that as well. Could you do the Hippie Trail again today? I don't think you could ever get that same sense of excitement, you know, because once you'd left from Dover, you just have to think, you know, no mobile phones, no internet, no Skype, communication by letters mostly. It was possible to phone back home, but that was really difficult. Very little in the way of hard information as well. I mean, there were some travel guides, but they'd been written for a different generation. They weren't really answering the questions that the Hippie Trail people were asking. So there was that sense of a leap into the unknown. And I think today, if you catch a plane out to Thailand or out to Peru, again, you might be meeting a society that's very different. but you're going to go with a lot more, or at least you could go with a lot more clear information about what you're going to meet, and you've always got that safety net. If it gets bad, your mobile phone, you can ring home, and the Hippie Trail has never had that. So, you can't sort of recreate it. The bigger question you're asking about the hippie spirit, I think something like that does still exist. Hippie is a bit of a contested word, a bit of a difficult word, but Glastonbury is still popular. Styles of music that can clearly be dated back to the 60s, or influenced by the 60s, are still very popular today. Tolkien is still popular. I think there is something of a case of saying they were part of a permanent change in our society, and that sort of option, that sort of attitude is still there. It might have different labels, but it hasn't gone away. The thing I learned, though, was just how seriously they took it. We hadn't been expecting them to say this was life-changing, and so many of them did say words to that effect. And that sort of strange mixture of idealism and bitterness, how idealistic they'd felt when they headed out towards the east, and the sort of, if you like, long, slow disillusionment since about 1978 or 1980, that, the things they'd been hoping for just hadn't happened. And that's why, we can't say so many, but that's why quite a few of them are now trying to publish their works, or at least collect their photographs and put them online, to mark their existence somehow. There were two very obvious audiences. Firstly, students at universities doing courses on the 1960s. And there's more and more of those, actually. I mean, as time goes on, people seem to be more and more interested in the 1960s. Secondly, though, as the book developed, the travellers themselves. I mean, there is that preliminary study by Rory McLean, but it's not really a history of the work, not really a history of the trail. So our work was the first history. So in a sense, we're writing for them, the travellers, but also then the travellers' children. People are interested in it. And there are still quite a few people now who are going out backpacking. They too might make a connection. So that sort of audience. The one thing we did notice, and we do say this at the beginning of the book, or somewhere in the book at least, both Brian and I have done lots of different research projects, and we're very used to, when we're meeting people, saying, I've got this new project, and you say what it is, and people normally say, what's that? And we did find with the Hippie Trail, this wasn't happening. Everybody knew what it was. And most people were saying straight away, that's interesting, whereas a lot of the other things we proposed, people were saying, why would you study that? So there might be a bit of interest out there. I don't know.